Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and you know what to do, folks. Rate us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening to this, and then you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Well, my voice just cracked there. YouTube.com/ESVN show, and then you can put on push notifications. Get notified when we're going live, which is at 4 p.m. on Mondays these days. Hello, Bradley Alsop.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
I am exhausted, just because I had so much stupid wedding stuff to do this weekend. I mean, it's not stupid, it's fun, but it's just
I know
like,
the feeling.
Between that and the Knicks and the Rangers, it's just like, oh my gosh, there's so much happening. So even if I'm a little tired, don't mistake that for me not being extremely thrilled about the way that New York sports are going right now. But anyway, hello, Bradley. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was less eventful than some of the other ones this past a few
That's
weeks.
good.
So happy to have a little downtime, but
That's
also
nice. And you were able to watch the games.
doesn't help when some of these games where, as an impartial observer, they are sometimes nerve-wracking just by virtue of what you're watching. But as a partial observer, they make me want to
Jump off a roof.
to end my life. In
Yes,
one way or
understood.
the other.
No joking about suicide. We're
apologies,
very
but-
sensitive. We're just speaking very
Extremely hyperbolically.
hyperbolically.
and,
I know. I get myself into those little bit of quandaries as well. We'll probably just kind of recap last week and the game sevens, and then preview some of these series. Which one NBA series has gotten started, as has one NHL series, but the rest of them are still up in the air. The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the choking allegations and ended up winning and beating the inexperienced Orlando Magic to go on into the buzzsaw that is the the Boston Celtics. And I'm just happy, I guess, for Donovan Mitchell, who was able to have a really strong performance, even though I know he's been dealing with a knee injury. The Cavs move on, they advance in the game 7. This was a series where none of the teams took a game that wasn't at home, right? So that was a big part of it. And Karis LeVert also had a really good game. But Donovan Mitchell in particular, because there's like, ahead of this, if they were to lose in this first round, there would have been a lot of questions about Donovan Mitchell's future in Cleveland, if it was going to work out for him there. But he's had 2 back-to-back phenomenal performances. The game before this in Orlando, he carried them to respectability. He had 50 points. So really, really good final way to end this series in terms of a performance by him. And Orlando, they show their flashes, but they're just too young. They don't have the depth, even though I don't even think Cleveland's that deep. But Cleveland has more depth than the Magic do. And Banchero and Wagner are budding superstars, but it just wasn't enough. And they have a ton to be proud of this season regardless. I will miss seeing those damn pinstripes, though. One of my favorite kind of jerseys in all of sports, the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, it was an interesting. I mean, we had the similar thought of like it would be good to see, to prove that they can win a playoff series, to see the Cavaliers win one. And I know some people it's potentially a little bit discrediting, but you can't really pick who you play. And this is nothing against the Magic. It's just the Magic were honestly, not only they overperformed this regular season, I'd say, but they overperformed in kind of an interesting way because again. Zach Lowe highlights the statistic a lot in some of his columns when just talking about the NBA writ large, that I think this is like the 8th or 9th or even potentially 10th season in a row that the Magic's offense has rated below 20th in like offensive efficiency or net rating. So they've had a long-term struggle offensively that has spanned many generations of Magic players and draft picks. So, I'm sure with more cohesion and more reps together as a young team, that'll continue to improve. And Oh, but at the same time, they did a really, really dogged and incredible and really well coached, well executed defense. So they were not an opponent that I think, despite some people maybe underestimating them, to really to scoff at. So I think it was good for the Cavs to take care of business in the way that they were able to, despite it going all the way to 7 games. And we'll see if they're able to put up a fight against the Celtics. I don't think they're a great matchup just because there's a lot of versatility on the Celtics side.
I would have been more worried about the defensive upside of the Magic versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, I think that it's gentleman's sweep at best is what we're talking about here. They may take one game.
I could see that as well.
Yeah, I still don't necessarily believe in this Cleveland team like long term. They still feel like they're missing a real superstar alongside Donovan Mitchell. But yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, you can catch the Celtics sleeping. I mean, the Heat were able to do so, but
Right.
really just I think to steal maximum 2 games. That's what we're really talking about here.
And there were some great performances. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, even in the losing effort, having 50 points was great to see because, honestly, when he is rolling and activated, he's a really, really great offensive player.
Right.
And even in a losing effort in the Game 7, I think Paolo Banchero had like 38 and 16 or something like that. So him, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, now he's sort of found his shooting stroke. Wendell Carter Jr. and even Jonathan Isaac in some limited minutes have actually, when he's not
arguably my least favorite NBA player. Yes, go on.
When he's not corresponding with the Daily Wire, he's actually he contributed some high energy defensive minutes for the Magic. So I think they're in a great spot for the future. So ultimately, I think there's not too much to be upset about or disappointed about for the Magic.
Right, exactly. So then we had 2 Game 7s in the first round of the NHL playoffs. The Vegas Golden Knights took the Stars to a Game 7 after taking both of the opening 2 games in Dallas. Then Dallas went to Vegas and they took 2 games there, I believe. Yeah, I believe. Or I forget exactly how it happened. Long story short, the first 2 games were taken by the Golden Knights and they just punched Dallas in the mouth, in part because we've seen this before. When teams kind of eke into the playoffs, they sometimes have more intensity and they're playing playoff hockey or playoff X sport for a longer period of time, so they can kind of hit the ground running once they get into the playoffs versus an opponent who's been sitting a little bit prettier. But I was happy to see that the Stars fought back and then they ended up winning Game 7. And the Golden Knights were the villains of the NHL this year just because they're doing what the Lightning have been so successful at doing, which and what got them those 2 back-to-back pandemic era cups was them stashing away their best players on long-term IR until the rules suspend for the playoffs, and Mark Stone coming back and basically hitting the ground running, being one of the leaders in forward minutes for the Golden Knights had people raising their eyebrows. But the Stars, it was a really rough series. I have my doubts that they're going to be able to actually make it to a cup final now because the statistics are pretty clear on, like, you need one round where you're kind of dominant so you have some rest in this long sprint to the playoffs. But I still think they're going to give the Avalanche a bit of difficulty, in particular because Jake Ottinger started to play much better as the series went on, and he had like a phenomenal save basically to clinch it for the Stars. So they moved on. They've been one of the best teams off the rush all season. I don't actually have the stats on the Avalanche off the rush, but they're incredibly lethal. All you have to do is watch them, and just the speed of Nathan MacKinnon, and then when Cale Makar wants to jump in as well, that end-to-end goal went viral was a thing of beauty. So there's no shortage of talent here. It's just like, can the Stars' younger, and we'll get into the playoff preview in a second, but can Jason Robertson and some of the younger guys also step up and give them the youth and speed that they need? Because the Stars have veteran presence up the wazoo. It's just, can they match the Avalanche's speed, especially after a rough series? I don't know.
And it's also funny that they're playing another like battle-tested team that has won a
Yep.
cup in the last like 2 or 3 years. So
Right,
it's going
right.
from the reigning champs to the 2 years ago champs in the
They've had a
Avalanche.
tough
It's a
road.
tough road for sure.
And we
Like
saw
the
this
Knights,
with
we're not gonna lie down,
Oh
given how
no.
much they've been through and the medal that they've shown.
I mean,
You
and
know.
I'm thrilled they lost, even though I'm a fan of Jack Eichels. I just like did not like how they
Yes,
operated, and the NHL needs to change their
the
rules.
chicanery.
Right, right. But the Avalanche should be terrifying. I mean, we'll talk about it in a sec. I think they're going to win that series, but it sucks because the Stars have been a well-built team for a really long time, and I think that they're one of the best well-built teams, if not the best well-built team in the NHL. But I just don't. I think the Avalanche are really hot right now, and Georgiev got over those yips that he was experiencing, and with that high-end talent, it might be tough. But the big story out of the NHL in terms of Game Sevens was, I'm so
Yes.
sorry, Leafs fans. I'm so sorry. It is every freaking year. But they are so dysfunctional. And that's the thing that just, but it's just like clockwork. They're going to put up a ton of points in the regular season. They have the offensive firepower. But when it comes down to playing, winning hockey, they can't do it. They don't have that clutch gene. And there were so many weird things that happened. Like all those weird injuries. Like why was Austin Matthews out for that one game? Right before Game 7, it was announced that, their starting goaltender was not, Woll was not going to be playing right before puck drop. And I know Nylander has been in and out of the lineup too. It's a very weird, because you don't typically see this with NHL teams. Like, you hear about some of the stuff that NHL players play through, and it's insane and it shouldn't be allowed. But these kind of one-off game rest situations in the middle of a really tough playoff series with one of your top rivals in the Boston Bruins just is odd. It just was weird. And it also was a difficult pill for Leafs fans to swallow because this is how they've lost in the past 10 years, or I guess now that was the 2013, 2014. I forget the first time, but like 12-ish years, that should be a good enough cushion. The Bruins had a 3-1 series lead on the Leafs and then beat them in 7. So the Leafs came back. In 2018, the same thing happened. The Bruins had a 3-1 series lead. The Leafs came back, forced a Game 7. The Bruins won that one. And then that just happened again this year. So they can't. And I saw like some Buffalo Sabres fans on Twitter were doing victory laps because apparently, I didn't know the statistic, but that the Sabres haven't made the playoffs in 13 years. But if you look at the last 2 decades, they still have more playoff series wins than the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are like perennially in the playoffs. It's just cruel. And but this is the thing is like the team is not constructed in a way, I think, that is built for playoff success in the NHL. Like they can't be paying Marner this amount of money, Matthews this amount of money, Nylander this amount of money, Tavares this amount of money, and be a complete enough team to be competitive when it gets down and dirty like this.
It's like Suns-esque almost.
A little bit, right,
just
exactly.
in terms of like it's very top heavy and has a lot of like high end talent, but at the expense of like real depth that's kind of required for when a series does start like grinding away at
Right.
teams' both resilience and stamina, basically.
I mean, I'm gonna look up their cap situation here, but it's not a good. They're not set up really well right now. I mean, yeah, you have Austin Matthews who is making. Next year he'll be making 13 million a year. Tavares is making 11 million next year, and then he's an unrestricted free agent after that. You might be able to move on from him, but he's also the captain of the team. Mitch Marner, who is only 27 years old, but is like the oldest 27-year-old I've ever seen in terms of just the weariness that he wears on his face, like because of how Leafs fans have just been so he's been the scapegoat, and he's not played well. He was a huge reason that a beat up Pasternak was able to get that goal in overtime to win. But Nylander is the guy. I think like the obvious people to move on from would be Marner and Tavares, but the problem is that they both have no move clauses. So Marner, I just think for his own mental health might need to go somewhere else. Like a fresh start could be good for him. And then they can begin to make this team a little bit more complete, but it's just the same old story. It's incredible. And you can't, as much as I have magical thinking about my teams, I know that curses aren't real. It's just like how teams choose to construct themselves. And the Leafs have a massive problem with how they construct themselves. It's more like the Dallas Cowboys. That's what they're like.
Yeah, that's also
that's what they're like.
A good reference point, definitely.
It's like Dak and CeeDee Lamb putting up huge numbers in the regular season, right?
Yep.
But when it matters, you can't just keep feeding your star because then you get all those jersey sales and all the stuff that comes with it. It's just not sustainable, like, tactics.
I also think there's one thing too of like there's one thing about both the Leafs. Well, the Leafs as this reference point in particular is that, of course, some or all, I would argue, potentially playoff success does have a lot of luck attributed to it as well. So on one hand, I think you could argue, of course, that, as of 2019 and now I would say as of 2024, it's probably, I think, 4 of 7 now, 4 series and seven times that the Bruins have like ripped the heart out of the Leafs in the first round of the NHL playoffs. You could certainly draw some of that to like, okay, that's some pretty terrible luck. But at the same time, I think when you're a well orchestrated, well put together team, you can either A, sort of make your own luck in some of those situations, or B, even if luck goes against you, either for or against you, you at least have more available to you to actually utilize that or combat the bad luck because of what you already have there.
The Bruins have been doing it for decades with that core. And like the Leafs are more talented. 100%. But the Bruins system and their battle testedness and like I hate the hell out of Marchand. He's annoying, but he's designed to be annoying. They're just effective, and they work that system really well.
Effectiveness is a good way of putting it, because to your point about Marchand, like obviously he's a pest and a little bit, and can be considered a little bit of a dirty player. But the thing I think would also is a testament to his staying power is that if Brad Marchand had like the personality of like Nathan McKinnon, he'd just be considered one of the like best players of the last like 10, 12 years.
Oh yeah,
just because he's legitimately like an excellent player. He's just an asshole.
Yeah,
and. So I think to your point, like they have really carved out set roles and they deploy them really effectively, and like the Leafs just don't have that.
Yeah,
and that's always been, I think, a consistent issue is that there's always been some piece of their identity, some piece of their some stitch in their fabric that has been missing. That's led them to not be successful in the playoffs.
I think it's a lot of it's the media attention on them. It's the way they're constructed. It's the way that I think. They're content with this regular season running up the score when you're playing 82 games a year. You're not getting every team's best effort on a lot of nights.
And that's right, totally.
And
totally.
and after the All-Star break, a lot of these teams are gutted to get assets for next year, and then you run up the score. And it's like, okay, but are you playing a sustainable style of hockey as you run up the score? And I just don't. I mean, and there's got to be some changes there. I'm not sure about Sheldon Keefe's future as well. He should be a bit under question, I think. I guess they're having a meeting today. So they also overhauled their front office, and it's still the same stupid stuff.
And to your point, as you were just mentioning about kind of beating up on the bad teams or running up the score, there was someone, I can't remember what this tweet was about. I mean not what the tweet was about, but what it was saying. But like, it was something about the Drake Kendrick Lamar beef was basically that like an error in Drake's ways is trying to combat better opponents with the same strategies that you deploy against lesser opponents, and thinking that if you just do the same, deploy the same strategy, it'll be similarly effective. And I think that very much applies to the Leafs here and some of these teams like the Cowboys and the Suns. Is like, yeah, with your big three of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, you can beat the Wizards by 35. You're not going to do that against the Nuggets. You're not going to do that against the Wolves. Same thing with the Leafs. It's like, sure, you could beat the Blue Jackets or you could beat the Ducks,
the Sabres, whatever.
And it's just not the same when you have to play the same team that is actively changing their strategies and countering your counters to play them to win 4 out of 7.
And what's amazing is I don't think the Bruins played that well. Like, they didn't even play that well.
And even that's a testament to it. Is like you could there. It's not just even trying to punch up to your opposition. It's also like if they make mistakes, it doesn't matter how good they are.
Right.
You got to capitalize on them.
Right. I guess that's a good opportunity. We'll just transition then into our NHL conference semifinals preview here, and then we'll do the NBA towards the end. Because that series between the Bruins and the Panthers,
yeah, that's going to be a fight.
That's going to be a fight, and not because I think the Bruins are the better team. I don't think they are. And I think they, lost an opportunity to take the division, and I think that is indicative of that, right? Like, they're going to be starting on the road now because they were unable to close it out at the end of the year. And they're also banged up. Like, Pastrnak scored that game winner, but as I said, he's not the same. He's dealing with something. And the Panthers are going to be well rested. I say Panthers in 6, but there is that angle of the Bruins are probably pissed about last year because the Panthers were the low seed that bounced them, and they're gonna have some those teams are very similar to last year. They're gonna have some salty feelings. Plus, they're an interdivision rival, and they've had some barn burners, like, in a good way in the regular season.
But it's funny you mentioned that because it's interesting that this is a rematch of last year when in that context it was the President's Trophy record setting regular season team Bruins against like the upstart 8 seed Panthers, who kind of seemingly scuffled into the playoffs but then went on a tear to make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. So and now, obviously, as you said, the composition of the teams aren't that different. They're just they're just in very different spaces.
And they're
going
older.
And they're old.
And the Bruins
older.
Are old.
Yeah, and I think that's one knock certainly against the Bruins in terms of how much they can keep up with the Panthers. But as we said, it always does help to have skins on the wall, be battle tested, have endured a lot of these types of series before. But I will say, it was impressive for the most part to see the Panthers pretty much dispense of the Lightning in a number of these games. There were certainly some close ones, but I just was impressed by how easily and how capable they were to get past them.
Well, we were talking about the Leafs just a second ago. A team that's built for playoff hockey is what I've always maintained is the forechecking Florida Panthers.
Right.
The floor.
The floor checkers.
I'm trying to make that work, but it's not working that well. Yeah, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, they are that's the kind of style that works super well. But the Bruins have a tried and true system. But you think about them being because they're perennially good, but that was the first time they advanced to round 2, the Bruins, since 2021, which I completely memory hold. I always just think of them as advancing. Not last year, obviously, but yeah, they the goaltending advantage probably goes to the Panthers. The youth and energy goes to the Panthers. But the Bruins understand how to play these kinds of games as well, and they also understand their opponent. So I'm going to say Panthers in 6, but and if the Bruins win this one, I will be actually floored. This is one of the ones I feel more confident in. I just think the Panthers are on another level, and they scare the crap out of me as a Rangers fan. Speaking of the Rangers, they took game 1 yesterday. Very exciting. They got a little sloppy at the end, but Mika Zibanejad's just playing on another level, which is really exciting because he's had some no-show playoff series in the past, and he can be a streaky player, but when he's on, he's on. And yeah, I mean, the Rangers, there was, some fears because they wrapped up that Capitals series so easily, and the Caps should not have even been in the playoffs, that they could be coming out in this situation of not coming out swinging. But they score the first goal with Mika Zibanejad. You know, I'm not going to give a prediction. I'll just get you can give that prediction just because of my superstitions. But yeah, I mean the Canes, Gensel has taken them to a different level. I think a lot of this is going to come down to goaltending, and I just trust Shesterkin more in that situation. So you can give your prediction.
Yeah, I think I would say even independent of my slight bias, because even as a Devils fan, I obviously will support the Rangers in the playoffs.
That's
No question.
fascinating.
Um,
Anyway, I would be rooting for the Devils' downfall so hard right
oh
now.
no, I have no issue. I like my New York teams.
You also have a bias towards Iranian
Well, and
Zibanejad.
right, I have a countryman on the team.
You
so
do, you do.
it's hard to root against
And
him.
oh my God, okay, I follow.
And you have a countryman on the team in Capo Caco.
Capo. I am a Finn, but I'm also Norwegian, so I have a lot of representation in hockey.
Right.
But I follow Zibanejad's wife on Instagram, posting about Gaza all the time.
Oh, so she's an ally too.
I mean, I was
boot.
just like, oh my God,
go.
yes. So anyway,
People.
go
but,
on. Yeah.
The even with all that being said, I actually do still think there's a real chance. My prediction now is Rangers in 7. Like I think it'll be close, but I think they can do it. Like I think, as you said, I think it's like styles make fights in a lot of ways, and I feel that way also about the Bruins-Panthers series. But I think this in particular, as you said, I think the system for both teams is just coming together more. I think the lines, as we've been talking about a lot over the last few months, are making a ton of sense and operating
Right.
really well. On the Rangers side, kind of almost 1 through 4. Like I just see a lot of like symmetry and like I get what they're doing.
Right.
And then on the other hand, we've always been saying the last few weeks that Gensel was kind of the missing piece for Carolina. I think that sets them on pretty equal terrain. But but as you said, I'm still pretty talk about battle tested and kind of like game worn, not in a bad way. I just mean in terms of how much he's been able to do in these last few postseasons. I trust Shesterkin as well to be solid in the net. So I think that's the edge. I agree with you that the edge I'd give in a 7-game series going all the way would be to who has Shesterkin or who has the better goalkeeper.
Yeah,
goaltender.
and I also I'm not moved by the depth of the Hurricanes specifically on like defense in the way that I had been previously.
Yeah.
I mean, Brady Shea, I know him well as like look, Brent Burns is really good, and
But Brent Burns is a little
older.
he's on the I think mid to late 30s at this point, given how many years he's been in the league.
Typically, I mean, he's 39.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, like true warrior, but
Right.
like has a lot of tread on his tires.
But Tony DeAngelo was their second pairing defenseman. Like I just don't. Typically, Carolina has been really, really strong defensively with a big stable of defensemen, and that's why I'm inclined to hopefully agree with you. But I'll also say the Rangers have more depth because of guys coming back from injury that are practicing. That they have those. Laviolette's not the kind of guy that's going to switch up their lineup when like they're so far 5-0 in the playoffs. He's not going to change things up, but. Hedl is back and practicing with the team.
And so
so is Blake Wheeler, who I thought tore his ACL, but I guess that's not the case because it's been 3 months, and apparently he's skating in the red no contact jersey with the Rangers, and I don't know what that means. But he'd be an incredible depth
But the idea
piece.
of even having those guys potentially be available, even if you don't want to switch up a good thing, if you have to, if something goes wrong,
right? That's what I'm saying.
If something starts to kind of if there's some chip in the armor, so to speak, in a game plan, you have 2 guys who, yes, would probably be a little bit getting their sea legs back, but a completely new flavor. Wheeler hasn't played in months. Wheeler hasn't played in months, and he has a ton of experience, and he would be I would say, 100%.
a perfect like 4th liner. But
Absolutely,
I don't want him back on the top line, but Hedl could also he doesn't want to play
X-factor.
he doesn't want to play wing, and I don't think they want to take Wenberg off that 3rd line center role. But he might just, if he wants to get back on the ice, maybe he should play wing because it could be insane if he comes back and plays wing on that line with Zibanejad and Kreider on the top line. So we'll see.
That would be pretty cool.
I worry about his health a little, but that would be pretty nuts. So I tend to agree with your assessment. Now let's go to the West here because we were talking a little bit about this matchup, I'm very intrigued by Avalanche Stars. It's like Georgiev had a historically horrible game 1 against Winnipeg, and then he just got better, and he seemingly figured it out mentally, which has sometimes been the struggle for him. But on the other side, you have Jake Ottinger, who, like between Hellebuck and Ottinger, I would say those 2 kind of West goaltenders who are seen as the cream of the crop hadn't been the best in the playoffs. I mean, in particular, Hellebuck had a really rough time, but that I think has more to do with the team. Ottinger has slowly been progressing to get better, and he had a great game 7. So I think this goes 7 games. Like, I think the Avalanche win it in 7. I think this is going to be another bruising series, but I think the Avalanche are the better high-end talented team. If it comes down to goaltending, I'm going to side with Dallas, but I just don't necessarily know. I don't know. I just it's hard to argue with how the Avs are playing right now. It really is.
I'm interested too into your point about how it's interesting to see what happens with teams when the goalkeeping is like the goalie play is getting better as opposed to either being like stable. As I would say, for example, like Bobrovsky is basically for Florida been like rock solid or even like pretty excellent.
We should have even mentioned him. Yeah, he's a Vezina candidate.
So far in the playoffs, I'd say. Whereas, like as we were saying, Georgiev had that horrible beginning with the 7-goal performance, giving up those
in
7
Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg, and so for him to be kind of be able to bounce back and rebound and come back and playing at a high level, same goes for Ottinger. I'm curious if that means like both of them will be really locked in, so it's more of a potentially of a struggle for like 1 or 2 goals, or if there's some regression or some reversion, if there's something to be unlocked by one team on the other side to like really capitalize on any potential like. You know, it's a matter of degree. Any potential weaknesses or that they see, can they capitalize? Because it's just been shown. Ottinger and Georgiev have been playing. I would say both on balance very good goaltenders, especially Ottinger.
Yeah.
But I think both of them have shown in prior series, even prior to this playoffs, that they can get people can get a jump on them.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see how that works and what kind of goes into the game planning and the strategizing. If it's going to be, if we see any shootouts, or it's mostly going to be kind of grind fests. But to your point, I still kind of think 7 games, I'm going to go with the more experienced team that's traveled farther in the playoffs.
That's actually won a cup. Yeah.
So I would take the Avs too.
I think it really is, now that you talk it out with me, it's depth, and it's like Dallas may be the deepest team in the NHL. It's depth versus high-end speed and talent. Right. And I'm always inclined to go with difference makers in the playoffs. I am, and
who have shown that they are, like, they're difference makers who have shown to be difference makers in the postseason.
Right. And Dallas is a little old. Like, Sagan, Pavelski, Duchesne. Like, they're not
Similarly, Pavelski, I think, similarly to Burns, I think is around probably 40 now, or close to it.
He's close to it. Close to it. I mean, he's 39 years old.
Yeah, so he's similar. Yeah.
So, they're a likable team. I've always liked the Stars.
Yes, and I love Pavelski in particular.
And
I'm
rooted
such
for
a fan.
them.
Yeah.
And I like Jason Robertson.
Yeah,
too,
they're truly a great team, great story. I love watching them, but I think
it's hard to overcome having a series like that in the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, at least to make it to the Cup. So even if they make it past this next round, I think the Oilers are going to beat the Canucks in 5. That's my hot take. I think the Oilers are like.
Speaking of high-end talent.
Whoa.
I mean?
They could win the Cup this year. And I've been saying this for weeks now, right? And I know that, like, they're another team that seems really cursed, but...
It's just different when we have a little bit more to give those guys, right?
I like Knobloch. I do, and I wanted him to be the Rangers coach, like, for a long time. And it seems like they actually have a system. It's showing up on their power play, which has been red hot.
100%.
And the Kings are a strong defensive team. The Oilers made quick work of them, like, pretty easily.
Yes, exactly. There was not, like, in this, and I think to your point about the Stars, it's like, I feel more comfortable forecasting or projecting something with the Oilers, knowing that they made much quicker work of their first round opponent. I would feel a little bit different. I was like, oh, the Oilers went 7 with the Kings, which was completely unexpected. I would not anticipate that level of a fight between those two necessarily, just from like a talent deficit. Whereas the Knights Stars made sense it went 7. I just more mean you're going in tired.
Yeah.
It's no question. You are going in a little bit more worn than another team, and you're going up against a team that's not changed too much, but was won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago.
Right.
Whereas the Canucks have been playing great hockey. They are upstarts.
They are.
No one was expecting them to be the 1 seed necessarily going into the playoffs.
Right.
The
Predators
season
did not move me. Like, I watched. That was the most boring series this entire playoff so far. because the Predators just don't have the high-end talent
Right.
that they need. Like they're strong, they have sound defense. They were expected to be rebuilding this year even. So like the Canucks won, but I wasn't really moved by the Canucks' victory over them. I was more unimpressed with both teams than I thought that I would be.
And if anything, the Preds is like it's a nice story because I always like when they're in the playoffs because it's a great it's Nashville is like a surprisingly great hockey town.
Yeah. Well,
and
white people live there.
Yeah,
So.
they love their Preds.
They love their white
Preds.
athletes. Yeah.
And but I agree with you in the sense that I don't think this series for the Canucks with the Preds being their opponent. I don't think it's shown us a whole lot yet about like their playoff identity because they weren't challenged a whole lot yet.
Yeah.
So I think this will be very clarifying to see how they play against literally. You go from the Preds, who we almost were like, are they going to make it? They're kind of in that sort of scramble at the end of the season to like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. Like, how do you handle that?
I think it's going to be fascinating. And this is like what's exciting is this is the Battle of Canada, right? This is
totally.
The final Canadian team left in the playoffs will come out of this series.
Which is right, and which is exciting also just to know that at the end that the way this is shaken out, at least one Canadian team will be in the conference finals. Just like that there is even a shot that a Canadian team makes it to the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
This far in is still pretty exciting to me.
The Oilers have had a much easier road than I think. Like it could have gone a bunch of different ways, but having the Kings and then the Canucks, much easier than what the Stars had to deal with as the top team in the West, which is what's shocking about it.
I think Oilers Knights and Oilers Avs to me would go relatively similarly, just in the sense of like that it's too tough outs in a row.
Yeah.
Whereas these ones, I think there's just a little bit more. The jury, I just think, and this is not me even, I'm not trying to minimize the Canucks' success at all. I just more mean like you're going against the best player in the league, the best player in the world, after dispatching a relatively middling Predators team. It's just going to be a different beast.
Yeah, right. I know, and it's just like the Predators just never had the high octane offense I think that you needed, but they're building something, so that's exciting.
Yeah,
right?
No matter what, I think again, honestly, for the Canucks this year too, similarly to what we were saying about the Magic.
Yeah.
But like the Canucks are obviously one seed, so different stature. I just more mean like this is gravy. Like this team is ahead of schedule.
Oh yeah, they are, right, and a huge hockey market in Vancouver. Like that's outside of Toronto. That's like
totally.
The second biggest, maybe, and Montreal. But
and what we were saying too, and almost the opposite of the Stars in terms of age. It's like Pedersen's a young guy. Quinn Hughes, young guy.
Yeah.
Like
JT Miller's older, but
JT
still
Miller's
not
little,
that old.
Right. And so I just think that it's a good mix of young guys to be building blocks with veteran depth. So I think they're going to be in a good position going forward.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. I mean, I love this matchup too.
These are good ones. All of them, I think, in one way or the other, have like a lot to
offer,
to like think about.
I would be hard pressed to see a scenario when the Oilers don't at least like make it. If they don't win it, I think they're going to take it 7 games. I mean, McDavid's kind of playing, and Draisaitl have been playing like men possessed right now. So
they're so lethal. It's awesome.
Yeah. Let's turn to the NBA, right? Shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
So, okay, we have already had one game played, and everyone's calling Anthony Edwards young MJ. I'm seeing it all. I'm seeing Perkins and the ESPN crew calling him young MJ. All right, guys, let's pump the brakes. But
even he's asking. He literally said, "Please don't compare me to the greatest of all time." He was like, "I'm flattered."
But holy crap, is he the hottest player in the NBA
He's so
right
freaking
now?
awesome. I mean, watching some of the highlights from game one. I don't know if I've seen in a while. Maybe LeBron or potentially. And sometimes this is cliched, but like I think you can sometimes tell when a guy's, everyone talks about in terms of like scouting, like the mythical like first step, you know what I mean?
Right.
Ant might have the fastest first step I've ever seen in my life. He is moving before I even see his feet moving.
He's one of the most athletic athletes I think I've literally ever seen in any sport.
Moves like Sonic the Hedgehog.
His footwork is just
a blur.
out of control.
And the way he can stop and start.
And his jumping ability.
Right, and how high he can jump. It's just like how athletically gifted he is at this point in his career and how much he's already harnessed some of that athleticism. And not only in just the stuff that I think we knew would be incredible to watch, the the driving ability, the ball handling ability, but he's also already making higher level passing reads and melding and kind of meshing more with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns than even last season. And he's starting to have a much more reliable stroke from beyond the arc. Like, he's becoming a player where it's like, I don't really know how you guard him.
Yeah.
I don't really know what you're supposed to do. Like,
it's not just his athleticism too, it's the twitchiness, which people talk about,
totally,
right? Like,
he's so twitchy.
You talk about that in the context of a great receiver, right? Having that twitch ability and the
100%.
ability to change direction like that. And he is that dude. And the Nuggets just look stunned. I mean, they look stunned.
Because I think they have, it's truly, especially in terms of like a star player to neutralize. Even last year, I think potentially they would have had an easier time with that version of Anthony Edwards. But this one, even guys who I'm usually like, oh, like, they are pretty capable, pretty able, pretty ready to kind of compete or stifle, in a way, any sort of defensive assignment. But even a guy like Aaron Gordon, who I would usually, for the most part, in these types of matchups, outside of like Draymond Green, I'm like, he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
He was caught flat-footed a few times, which is so rare for a guy like Gordon.
Yeah, it totally is. And I guess it really is also going to be an issue when Jamal Murray is not going to be able to be his full self. He's still questionable now for game 2.
So taking advantage of that even is like
right. I mean, he had 17 points and last game I would need to go look again to see how he looked, but it's clear seemingly that this is something he's dealing with, right? Jamal Murray. So he was such a key to their championship run and his incredible shooting ability. So I don't know if that's some of the missing piece. I would have thought that the Nuggets would have been able to kind of pull away at home without him even being able to perform at his higher levels. But it just like when you talk about Gobert and you talk about Cat and Anthony Edwards, that trio, if they're all clicking, it doesn't really get much better than that right now. And so,
definitely,
it's just like, to your point about what the Nuggets had to deal with with this team versus the Lakers series. That's not a team that has the twitchiness and athleticism and youth of this team. I mean, even Cat is still a pretty young guy, and Gobert has just been phenomenal defensively this whole playoff so far.
And with the Lakers too, it was also a specific matchup that outside the one game that they were able to wrest away from them in the first round,
right,
the Lakers had essentially lost, I think, 12 of 13 against the Nuggets.
Yes.
Like, they were a specific team-to-team matchup that was very advantageous for the Nuggets. And this is a little bit of a different story, I think, because as I was saying, I think Ant himself has improved so much. I think the kind of seamlessness of the relations on the court between Gobert and Cat and Ant have really improved, and I think the depth has just been so much more effective.
Right.
Already seeing what Jaden McDaniels has been able to do on both ends of the floor, because he's so lengthy, he's such a great point of attack defender and perimeter defender, so that him making even like 3 to 5 3-pointers really changes the math on things, because he's not just a guy you put in to lock somebody down. He also can be a drive and kick target at some point as well for Ant, when he makes a play. And same thing with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is almost like Jaden McDaniels, but like a little bit, I would say, less talented defensively, but like a very good 3-point shooter. So to like have those options too, combined with the leveling up that Ant has clearly shown, has made them so much more dangerous than they were last year.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how the Nuggets respond, because that's one of the worst offensive performances I've ever seen them put up.
No, it's almost like it's uncanny. Like it's so rare, and especially at home, no less.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I mean, and I think that they're going to take this next game. They're going to try to respond. This is not going to be even though the Wolves are 5-0 so far in the playoffs, incredibly. I just can't see this being as much of an easy series, of course, given the level of talent that we're talking about, the defending champions here. But the fact that's a huge, huge game to steal. Like when you don't have home court 100%. Advantage, right?
No
now we're talking like anything can happen. So I'm just going to go with Wolves in 6 and have them close it out at home, just because that's the storyline I want to see, although I have no idea how this is going to go. And they're the hotter team right now.
Yeah. I think I will say because I think the way I see it is just it's hard for me to bet against the defending champs until I can't bet against them since they're out. I will go Nuggets in 7.
Okay, got you.
But
on that.
would. But this isn't even. There's nothing. There's no agenda behind it because I would be absolutely thrilled if the Wolves won.
Oh, totally.
It would
Yeah,
be
we're
so
rooting
sick.
for our guy Matt.
Yeah, and Matt would be absolutely overjoyed. So.
I mean, and then if
Added bonus.
they're in the conference and they're in the Western Conference Finals, anything goes. Like,
oh yeah, of course.
they should be the favorite.
Totally.
I mean, I take them. I would take them over both OKC and Dallas.
Yeah, agreed.
I would take either of these teams.
I
probably.
think OKC in particular would be a pretty bad matchup. For them against the Wolves, just because like I think Gobert against Chet, I think would be just like strength and kind of like
I mean,
and rebounding in particular would be a real challenge.
I hesitate to underestimate the Thunder because that's happened like this entire time and they've just risen to the challenge. But I guess we'll turn to that series now because I'm really excited. This is another incredible matchup of hopefully lots of scoring.
Yes, I think so.
That's what it seems like it's going to be. And Doncic was really hard on himself in the first series. He still played really well, and he has the size where, like, I mean, he can make up for a lot of things. But if he's able to get right, that I don't know. I mean, what are you thinking? I can't.
So
OKC is so fast, but they're deliberately built in a way that has disadvantages, but to enhance their speed, their youth, their agility.
Like what makes them liable to like drop 130 points on the drop of a hat also makes them liable to get out rebounded and like win 130, 127, for example. You know what I mean? So I think there's definitely, I think if a team is smart, I think there are ways to potentially neutralize that. It hasn't happened fully yet, you know. And again, similarly, the Pelicans were not the most formidable matchup. This against a guy like Luka Doncic, who's, going to probably be second or third in MVP voting, is definitely a different challenge. But in my view, I'm still probably going to take Luka and Luka's upside in this series over the Thunder, and I think it could be Mavs in 6.
Okay.
That's my guess. That's my prediction.
I know. It's just like I feel like OKC we thought was going to be a rough series with the Pelicans, and then they swept them.
Yeah, and it was like
even without Zion, we anticipated that might be the case.
Like even just like slightly more competitiveness, just by virtue of kind of the way that the Pelicans are coached and like operate, like the toughness of those guys. But it just they were overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed without Zion.
Yeah, I mean, and the Dallas's defense has been better than I thought, and especially was better than I anticipated at the end of the regular season when you kind of look back on that. So,
I guess I'm just thinking that if we see kind of the best versions of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving with like enough shooting around them from like PJ Washington, Tim Hardaway Jr., the newly revived Dante Exum, as well as this kind of pick and roll connection that Luka's developed with guys like Derek Lively Jr. and Daniel Gafford. I can see it where they kind of do find a good recipe against OKC, but I also could be wrong, and OKC could just truly shoot them out of the gym, just like it would just like which is like not an impossibility.
I'm saying OKC in 7. I just think like I'm worried about this Luka injury. It seems to be constantly cropping up, and
that seems to I think would be a real X factor. Is like if anything happens to Luka, I think that's. It's a totally different series to me if he's out. Or if he's out or if he's limited.
I'm just going with the team that hasn't let anybody down and has like honestly been surprising. And the Mavericks have shown that they can kind of fall asleep as they did against the Clippers when like that game where Harden was just like getting to the rim with complete ease where they took it to make it 2-2 in Dallas. I was just like, what are they doing? What are they doing, the Mavericks? It just felt like they broke down and that was that.
If they're in any way flat-footed or kind of like if they slow down the pace whatsoever, both like even in the half court or in transition, like the Thunder will tear the hoop off the rim.
Yeah.
Like they have to maintain or at least do their absolute best to match the speed that the Thunder are going to come at them with.
Right. Yeah. And didn't Jason Kidd just get a contract extension with them?
Well, I'm not sure if it's happened or if it was rumored to, just because it was also part of the conversation around whether
He
he'd
just got
leave.
it 8 hours ago.
Whether
Yeah.
he'd leave to join the Lakers because they fired
Jason
Darvingham.
Kidd does not move me, and I will always root against the guy who has multiple credible accusations of domestic violence
Oh yeah, I
against
think
him.
he's a psychopath.
Yeah, I
think
am
he's
not a Jason Kidd person, never will be, and will
no.
always root against him. So, that is that. And we have the West down pat there.
That's right.
Let's turn. We'll do our guys last. Celtics versus Cavs. We already kind of previewed this. I think it's a gentleman sweep situation. I think the Cavs may take one in Cleveland.
I hope it'll be competitive in some ways, but I just think this is not like I was saying earlier. I just think the spacing and the need for the big men, and Evan Mobley is certainly capable. Don't get me wrong; he's certainly capable of defending at the perimeter.
Right.
But I think if the matchup basically calls for guys like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to be out in the perimeter a lot, because that's where Porzingis is probably going to be. And even in some of these smaller lineups, just having to kind of catch these guys as they swing everything around and get the defense into rotation and things like that. I just think the Celtics could really not they could really tire the Cavs out on the defensive end for the Cavs, but then also blitz them on the other side as well.
Right. Yeah, I
Like-
wonder what the status of Porzingis' injury is, by the way.
Right. So that's also a factor to consider.
They may try to be safe with him, and then that could give the opportunity
a little bit for the Cavs, but
the Cavs
I would say the most generous, I think, in terms of outcome would be Celtics in 6 if the Cavs could
Yes.
win 2, but I'm inclined to think that it'll be 4-1.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be 4-1, and then the Cavs take one at home. They split in Cleveland and
Right.
then go back to Boston and they close it out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the Boston's home court advantage is so well established at this point. It's just difficult to think of another scenario.
And as I'm thinking about this in my head, I can really see how the Celtics offense could capitalize on the Cavs defense, but the Celtics defense is like a boa constrictor.
Right.
It's like
right.
they are just very, very good at zeroing in on what you need to take away, so that like the offense basically on the other end of it just stops working.
Yeah.
So
the one saving grace is that Jared Allen is also banged up, right? So
Right,
it's like
right.
Porzingis and Allen.
it could be a little bit of a wash if both of them are.
But
not,
if it's
are
a
limited.
wash, it's still gonna
it's
be
in the Celtics' favor.
in the Celtics' favor.
And the other thing with the what I mean with the Celtics defense is like, so for example, the Cavs, I would say, with their biggest four, like of Mobley, Allen, Mitchell, and Garland, they can't really afford for any of four of those guys to be like effectively neutralized. And like, for example, if like Drew Holiday like completely neutralizes Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, that's that's an anchor around them. They need those
we
guys
didn't even
to be,
talk about the Bucks, but God, are they missing perimeter defense? And they did not replace that. Drew Holiday is missed.
I think I made the joke where I was like, you know who the Bucks are sorely missing right now is a guy like Drew Holiday who they traded. I mean, who left the team.
It just sucks because I love Dame, but I
know.
just don't know
This is brutal.
what this is. I mean, they're getting old too. They are getting
No,
old.
it's you always think about windows with these things, and sometimes these
They
windows
close so quickly.
Yes, like sometimes the proverbial window closes either faster than you think or just abruptly, like unceremoniously, just shut.
Might be.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Just something
who's
to
to say,
flag.
but yeah.
I mean, they can run it back next year, but if they still have my arch nemesis Doc Rivers on the roster, I mean, not on the roster, employed as their head
Exactly.
coach, I'm going to be a bit more skeptical about that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Here we are. What do you think?
I'm trying to be cool about this.
So there's a lot of angles to this, right? I would be lying if I said that I was more anxious going into a matchup against the Sixers than I am against the Bucks.
Well, I think it's just different when you're going against...
than I am against. So what did I say?
Pacers.
Pacers, not the Bucks. Apologies.
It's different for me because I'm far more worried about. I was far more worried going into the first round, thinking like, oh, like we have to contain like an injured Joel Embiid is like still one of like the top 5.
I mean,
best
the
players in
numbers
the
the
world.
numbers show it. He's automatic.
and the reigning MVP. It's like that was a tough assignment to get in the first round as a 2-7 matchup. It's not very often that the reigning MVP is on the 7 seed side of things to take on the number 2. But I think the Knicks can. I think what will benefit the Knicks, or what is it going in the Knicks' favor, is the fact that although I think they've improved slightly, the Pacers are still not a very good defensive team. So every offensive possession for the Knicks is going to really have to count to kind of capitalize on that. But on the other hand, I think the real challenge of facing a guy in a similar way where I would say I'm not as intimidated, but I'm intimidated slightly by containing the duo of Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam, who was, I would say, Siakam in particular has been the best scorer for them in the first round.
Well, we have a man by the name of OG Anunoby.
But to your point with that is that I think a sort of tweener, rangy, extremely long-limbed defender against Siakam is a guy that the Bucks did not have necessarily as readily available to contain a guy like Siakam. Whereas Anunoby and his former teammate actually match up pretty well against each other one-on-one.
Well,
so it'll be interesting.
OG matches up against him quite well defensively. OG matches up with everybody,
and he's a guy, obviously to his credit, that we greatly appreciate as Knicks fans to be able to basically take on any assignment.
He's my new favorite player, by the way.
But Siakam, I think, is definitely what he was giving kind of the Bucks reserves fits with last series. Hopefully OG is able to kind of contain some of that. But then I think the other person I always said I was kind of intimidated by is Halliburton, because Halliburton is so creative in terms of being as a passer and a shooter, and the Pacers themselves play so fast, and the Knicks are going to really have to try and match that pace on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, look, I am in love with OG Anunoby. Like, as a player, as a person, he is everything that you want a teammate to be. He is always making the right play. Always making the right play. And he has, like, the Knicks have to get serious and lock him up in this offseason. Defensive player of the year capabilities. This is what we're talking about with his ability to lock a guy up.
And he's also just been something that, like, the Knicks have missed.
Yes.
Or almost, I would argue, potentially have never really had a guy like him.
I'm so bummed out about Bogdanovic, like another
Yep.
dirty Sixers play that injured him, by the way. But he is out, and I know that their bench is just like, the Knicks are so unlucky this year with injuries, because if we had Bogdanovic coming off the bench and Randall was back, I mean, this is a whole different situation.
It's a different team. And
Mitchell Robinson is clearly not fully himself. Like, he made some really dumb plays that the Knicks had to overcome in Game 6 to close that out. But I still love the versatility that the Knicks have at the center position, because if you need an offensive guy, Hartenstein can come in, and if you need a defensive player who can really make plays with blocks and game-changing, also rebounds too. I mean, even though he's not as big as Robinson, like, let's just be, Hartenstein's been awesome off getting boards. Been a great rebounder. The Knicks are the best rebounding team in the NBA, and I think that's in large part due to the fact that they trust both of these guys at the center position in Mitch and Hartenstein. So yeah, the Knicks have like an intensity level. They have great game planning. Brunson is automatic too, and I don't think he's going to have the slow start that he did, because I don't know if the Pacers have an Oubre type rangy defender that's going to get him all pissed off like that. Like, Brunson, I think, might hit the ground running here, which could put the Pacers on the back foot.
Yeah, and I'm trying to also game out that matchup of who would be like the primary defender on Brunson, if it would be Halliburton.
Right.
Because Halliburton is long, but I would say he's not as I think it's not that it's maybe I mean, we'll see obviously how this bears itself out, but I think Brunson, just because he's so willing to kind of, like, when he drives, kind of go into somebody's chest, like,
right.
Even though he's a little bit smaller in stature, he's tough, and he's dense for his body type and his height and weight. So I think it'll be an interesting matchup to see, like, how or when he can exploit some of that against Haliburton if Haliburton is the primary defender on, or if it's a guy like TJ McConnell potentially who's a little bit more of a pest, a little bit more of like a try hard defender. That'll also be interesting just to see what they do or who they see as the best option to throw at Brunson.
What's your prediction? Your mic's not on.
Do you want my really confident prediction?
No, I want your honest prediction. I don't know what that means. What do you
Because I
mean?
have two different ones.
That doesn't make any sense.
I have my really confident prediction. I have my realist prediction.
Realist. So I want you to give your honest analytical assessment as a serious sports analyst like we are over here.
It's so hard it's so hard to be a serious and sober sports analyst with my New York Knickerbockers.
Well, I mean, I literally won't do it.
But
So.
I'm going to say Knicks in 6.
Okay, I would say if I were to have to be forced into making a sort of assessment on that front, that I would maybe be inclined to say something similar, but just hypothetically, obviously.
Oh, Lonzetta, our esteemed ESVN chat mod on YouTube said that it's going to be Aaron Naismith or Siakam on checking Brunson. That would be tough. Hopefully they can switch Siakam off if that's the case. But Naismith is similar build and a good defender, so that will be interesting.
That will be interesting to see. All right, guys. Gonna read some IMs and then we will wrap up here. J-Man Jays, the Leafs losing like that is the most Leafs thing ever. Anyway, I'm rooting hard for the winner of the Oilers-Canucks series. Oilers beating the Rangers in the finals would be glorious. Left is best. Yeah, thank you, J-Man Jays. Kendrick-Drake Maudry says, I'm curious both about your predictions and analysis here. How many more diss tracks does Kendrick have to drop before Drake gets booed out of NBA courts? I don't know if Drake can show his face anywhere right now. Oh my God. I mean...
Yeah, he's got to take a step back, I think.
Here's
He was
the
hinting
thing.
at it, I would say, towards the end of the most recent one, where he sort of at the end was like doing more talking at the end of the most recent track, where he sort of was like, all right, no, let's stop. Let's stop doing this. Let's stop.
I thought
please,
that,
I'm begging you to
Please,
stop.
I'm begging you to stop.
I would like this to be over.
So I would not, I have some strengths in my life. I would not challenge Caitlin Clark to a game of horse, for example, right? I understand my limits.
I think Drake in a number of ways.
Drake does not.
Understand his limits.
Oh, well.
Allegedly.
What are you doing, bro? You are not, I am as nostalgic for Drake's music as anybody. Like, because of this, I started remembering, I love Take Care.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not even a hater.
I love Nothing Was the Same.
Yeah, I love Drake's music. I just think he's so personally, odious to me that I think that's always why I'm like...
Well, I'm nostalgic for it, but it's pop R&B. That's what it is. And
it's not...
sometimes he raps, okay? Like, he sometimes sings, and the idea that he thinks he can go toe-to-toe with Kendrick, who has street cred, grew up in, LA, old school, sees Tupac as his hero, rightly so, because they have similar kind of, they position themselves similarly. The wordsmith of our generation, universally recognized probably as, the greatest young rapper of the 2000s and 2010s. Rapper. Not pop star. And you're a pop star. Why are you picking a rap battle with a rapper? And Drake's had some good bars, but the material's weak as hell.
And whether you see this as pretensions or putting on airs or whatever the case may be, Kendrick is very intentional that in some of his capacities, especially with the album as an art form, that he is trying to create a substantive, comprehensive, musical, political, social, cultural, whatever you call it, statement with his work.
Yeah.
Even from Good Kid, Mad City, that was a conceptual album. I just more mean in the sense of whether it's pretentious or not, there is just something that I think Kendrick is aspiring towards. It's just slightly more than this is gonna bang in the club, or
totally,
or for Drake to be I texted this girl at 4 a.m. and now I'm sad and like Marvin's Room, for example.
Right.
Which is a great song, but it's literally him navel gazing about a girl who doesn't like him anymore.
Right, I know, exactly. And there's a place for that.
There's absolutely a place for it. I love his music. It's just I think I just think it's a different.
But let's be real, he hasn't had a good album in 8 years.
And that's the other thing too, is that he's also a volume producer in terms of how prolific he is, which leads there to be a real separation of quality and quantity sometimes. Like the last like 3 or 4 albums, I think
Well, that's
probably
how I
the
feel
best
about Taylor Swift. It's like, okay, you're a pop star. I don't have to pretend you're a feminist icon, but she's also quantity over quality these
and
days.
she's had a lot of volume as well. And the same thing goes for I would say also though in regards to Drake's catalog recently, I think the best one he's done is the one he did with 21 Savage, but then prior to that, I think like even as far back as like Scorpion, that was like even before that, I would say I think it would be like the album I actually liked the most prior to Scorpion, which is like at this point like 4 albums ago.
Let me see actually here. Okay, so her loss was horrible. Like unlisten. I didn't even like. Oh, that was the one with 21 Savage. I'm sorry, I really didn't like.
Oh
that
yeah,
album.
that one that one I just thought I had some tracks where I actually was like, oh, like this is catchy and like.
Like For All the Dogs, I can't name one really song.
Yeah,
that
see, I'm not super
sticks
familiar
out
with
to
that.
me. Oh no, that's not even the one. Honestly, never mind. I hate it.
Yeah, that's that one I didn't think was particularly good.
The stupid one with the pregnant ladies on it, Certified Lover Boy.
Yep,
That's
that one.
I mean,
Yeah,
we're
again.
still that's 2021. Okay, last good album was Scorpion. That was the last, and that was in 2018.
Yeah, so like that's sort of where I would like begin where I'm like, oh, like that's where I like last thought Drake put out like a legitimately like commendable / like listenable front to back product.
Well, and it was front to back because there's 2 sides. Another thing is like a little bit more restraint, buddy, in terms of the numbers of tracks that we're
Yeah,
talking
and he does
about
like editorial
here.
discretion
But
concerns.
I
as
mean,
well, obviously.
Views, I would say, was probably his last really good
yeah,
front to back album. Scorpion's more hit or miss for me.
I think that's probably why I was saying because like Scorpion I think I got good tracks, but I think Views is literally the last one where I was like, oh right, like
he
he's
was
at the
on
top
a
of his game.
heater.
Yeah,
Like
he's at the top of
Take
his
Care,
game.
nothing was
Yeah.
the same, and then I guess it was
And Views I'm pretty sure.
yeah. And again, those are great pop, hip hop, R&B ish albums.
Right. I think there's just truly a different texture, a different kind of connotation to what they both do.
So he just picked a losing battle from the beginning, which is what is just astonishing to me.
And a guy who like who against like above all else is like very clearly like
Yeah.
I mean, not only really genuinely hates his guts, but is like fastidious and tireless and relentless in making that clear.
And you know what the thing is like that I said this to you earlier, but what would get me the most if I were Drake is that mole stuff. Like that's psychological warfare. You don't know who's in your crew that's sending him your Ozempic prescription.
But here's what I'll say too. Even the most recent the most recent Drake response, he implied that someone was feeding Kendrick misinformation about the rumors about his daughter. But I don't think that passes the smell test because one, knowing Drake and knowing even just people's basic human nature, after that one comes out a few days ago, you're not immediately saying, "Ha, you fell for that," and showing evidence that you planted that for Kendrick. If you have no evidence that you planted it, I don't believe it.
Oh, of course not.
And also you're gonna come out 2 days later with a song and say, "Oh, by the way, I misinformed you," while the narrative around the song has been permeating for 2 days. You're gonna lose the control of the narrative for 48 hours before saying, I planted that.
Yeah, and even in his responses, he's not even addressing the most insane allegations in it, which is the underage girls.
Well, this most recent one, he basically is like, he has some good stuff against Kendrick again. Then he goes, the thing that really loses me is when you have to every 6 or 7 bars say, and by the way, I'm not a pedophile.
Yeah, right.
To be clear, also, I know no one was saying I am not a pedophile.
Yeah, right. But and also, I'm gonna bring up Millie Bobby Brown out of nowhere.
I haven't hung out with Millie Bobby Brown in years, bro. No one brought Millie Bobby Brown up except you.
But,
why do you have an example of a younger woman that you hang out with? You're 38 years old. She's 20.
I remember that.
Yeah,
and I remember being
friends.
like,
"You're friends. You're 17 years old."
I remember being like, oh, people are making a big deal out of this. Like, maybe it's fine. I don't know why I just decided to be dismissive of it in my mind, just because it's such a huge accusation. But then now I'm starting to think like,
it's just crazy to be like, oh, like I'm definitely not a pedophile. Like I haven't even seen Millie Bobby Brown in 4 years when she was 17. It's like, bro, why are you bringing her up? Don't even bring attention to that. It's gonna be Streisand affected.
Oh.
Now we're all talking about it again.
yeah, he really messed up. And J. Cole, his response was corny as hell. But again, Cole is a rapper. Like, Drake is overestimating his abilities as a rapper and more than a pop star. And J. Cole had the self-awareness to be like, never mind.
And Cole did the right thing. He was like, I'm good. I actually don't need this in my life.
Wow.
Sorry, just need to get all that off my chest.
Such fun times that we're living in. I mean, not anything that we cover on our regular job, like politically, but this is at least a fun distraction for the time being.
100%.
I saw a great tweet saying Kendrick's got to do Netanyahu next.
He's
gotta.
The campaign start.
He's the only hope that we have, folks. All right, guys. Few more IMs. Will from Indiana. Well, good luck, you two. In my opinion, the Knicks offense will be able to tear apart the Pacers defense, and the Knicks defense is going to frustrate the Pacers' high-paced offense more nights than not. As much as it pains me to say it, my prediction is the Knicks take the series 4-2. God damn it. On the bright side, if that happens, watching my IU guy, OG Anunoby, play more would be a nice trade-off. Glad you love him as much as I do. Again, best of luck, and may the best team win. I want no animosity, even though it's a battle of our teams. Will, I could never have animosity towards you. You know
Except for now.
Now, yes, locked in. Golden Oyster Cult. Kendrick Lamar is Drake's Hannibal Buress. That's so funny. Noah from Tampa. Kendrick has, for people that don't know, just Google Hannibal Bill Cosby.
Yeah, just the beginning of the grapevine. For that
my
is,
God.
Hannibal Buress.
I mean, what a king, right? He's so funny too.
One of my faves.
Yeah. And the final I am of the day. Noah from Tampa. Kendrick has been too cold, not kidding. And it's unironically good that he's picking on Drake for being a bad man and role model. Yes, it's super fun. I sent it to like some of my girlfriends who just aren't that interested in things like this. And one of my friends responded, "Oh, this is bullying." And I'm like, yeah, and it's great. It's great. All right, guys. Appreciate you all. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye.